The Florida Gators regular season is kaput. It's over. 6-6 is the record. Kind of what was expected going into the season. The win total was set at 6, but we're going to talk about what happened this past weekend against Florida State here on Locked On Gators.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. We're available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Brandon Olson, Twitter, WNS_Brandon, Rittenberg, Whole Nine Sports, Giants Country of SI.com. Florida Gators regular season's over. Before we talk about the game that just happened, there's probably a bigger talking point coming from this past weekend, which is Anthony Richardson. Stay, declare, transfer. Those are the options. And look, transferring is nothing new. The rumor isn't from him, by the way. It was Damian Parson with the Draft Network was like, hey, I would like to see him stay in school, but at a different school. I think that's a bad idea. That's something, again, that people have been suggesting for a while has been, hey, go get a year with a QB guru. And I'm obviously not in this particular instance, but like Lincoln Riley, who obviously will have Caleb Williams next year. It's just an example. Dillingham just got hired at Arizona State. Go there. Fickle just got hired at Wisconsin. Go there. Things like that. I think transferring is the worst idea for Anthony Richardson. Because it's like, oh, you struggled in year one as a starter for a team in your first year with a head coach. Go do it again someplace else. Like, I think if you're gonna stay in college, it's smarter to just stay at Florida rather than have to restart entirely, get in sync with all your guys, get a new playbook down, get everything down. I think it's smarter to just say, hey, I'll stay another year in Gainesville, or I'll go to the draft. Again, as far as staying or going, I think Anthony Richardson declares for the NFL draft. I do think he has played his last game as a Florida Gator. Like a lot of people on that roster have. We know portal opens soon. We know a week from today. So portal opens. Coaching carousel's already underway, which could impact Florida. We'll talk about that at another point this week about assistants that could leave, be replaced, added on to this team, all that stuff. But as far as Anthony Richardson, I think going to the draft is kind of the smart idea. Like risk-wise, I think it's smarter for him to go to the NFL now as opposed to going to the NFL in a year. Just because, also this, we'll completely disregard injury. We'll forget injury, but would you rather have $8 to $20 million in 6 months, depending on where he gets drafted, or risk injury for another year, maybe make a few more million in a class that is going to have Caleb Williams, in a class that is going to have these other kids that are also highly ranked? Every year we go into the draft and as we get closer to the end of the college football season, we go, oh, there's really only 2 or 3 guys in this draft that I'd take in the first round. Every year that happens. And next year is going to be the same thing. Who is it going to be, though? We'll see. But I think if you're AR, you go to the draft now, you make your $8 to $20 million, you get your $8 to $20 million contract. You don't risk that injury. You get a year of development, most likely, behind a veteran starting quarterback or a bridge quarterback, whatever you want to call them. But you get that little year. And because another thing is that also, if you come back to college, you can't be the same Anthony Richardson. You have to be a better Anthony Richardson. And if that just doesn't happen, that's going to hurt your stock a lot, because then it's the same thing with Bo Nix. Bo Nix, the reason I don't like him as a draft prospect, he's got 3 years of tape with 1 year of could he be the guy tape. and a whole bunch of flashes in between all 4 of those years. Anthony Richardson, you've got that for 1 year, so you could say, yeah, it's his first year as a starter, though. Like, maybe once he gets a little more comfortable, a little more experience, all that stuff, he'll be a lot better, especially as someone who Anthony Richardson has improved throughout the year in the intangible stuff for the most part. There was a big setback in the Vanderbilt game where he was clearly visibly frustrated. Florida State, he played one hell of a football game. I don't care about his completion percentage. He played a good football game, as good as you can really ask and expect from him. But also for Anthony Richardson, as far as development goes, I think it's smarter to go to the NFL. I know a lot of people are like, oh, get another year at college, get a second year with his coaching staff, do all this, get that development. I have nothing against Billy Napier. I have nothing against Ryan O'Hara. I have nothing against any staff member. But this coaching staff has not proven their ability to develop a quarterback long term. And that's not saying that they can't. I'm not saying they can't. I'm not saying they shouldn't, wouldn't, whatever. I'm saying they haven't proven that. A big part of that is because this coaching staff is so young, you haven't really had many chances. And I mean, if you're Billy Napier, you had like Levi Lewis for a few seasons. And it's like, well, is he really the kind of guy that you can mold and develop? Or are you winning games despite him? And I think that's what was going on. But I think most places in the NFL will be a better chance to develop as a quarterback than Florida. Most places, your head coach isn't super in charge of quarterbacks directly. There's offensive coordinators and development coaches and quarterback coaches. And here, Billy Napier's head coach, he's the guy that runs the offense. He's the guy that runs the QB room. He's got a lot on his plate. You can only get so much one-on-one development. And the next guy is an offensive analyst in Ryan O'Hara. I think when you go to the NFL, you'll have a much more defined coaching staff that will be able to actually focus on you and develop you instead of having to worry about the entire rest of the team and the entire rest of the offense as well. Then you have someone with experience. I think that's a big thing where, yeah, it's great to get a second year of starting experience, but I think 1 year on the bench in the NFL is more valuable than a second year as a starter at Florida or even at most universities. I think you've got a better chance of getting developed at the NFL. The team gets to build around you for a year. They get to figure out what you're like. They get to do all these things. Anthony Richardson, I think, is gone. I don't think he transfers. I think he stays, or I think he declares the draft. But again, I think he's gone. Best of luck to him. And I will say again, I think it's the right choice for him to declare. I just think that's the risk averse thing to do is what I'll say. But we're about to talk about the actual Florida versus Florida State game and the offense versus the defense and what happened really. But first, today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by Upside. From cringing at the pump to getting an eye-popping check at your favorite restaurant, inflation is hitting us all where it hurts, and it really, really, really hurts the wallet. That's why I started using Upside. It's an incredible app for anyone who buys gas, groceries, or dines out. I was using a relative's car a couple weeks ago. Had to fill it up. I was ready to swing on them because that is insane. But luckily, Upside, I at least got some cash back for my, I think it was like $50 to get half a tank. And that's not usually what my car is like. So that pissed me off. But use promo code LOCKED and get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more with promo code LOCKED. As the sun comes out and small businesses are back in business, LinkedIn Jobs makes it easier for you to grow your team. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the people that you want to interview faster and for free. And if you've never used LinkedIn Jobs before, I highly, highly recommend it. It is how I got my last job before joining Locked On. I almost said before joining LinkedIn because, Locked On, LinkedIn, very, very close to each other. But with simple tools like screening questions, makes it easier for you to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. Nearly every week, 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We're available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. And looking at this Florida Gators offense versus Florida State Seminoles defense from Friday night, I think I said Saturday earlier just out of habit, but from Friday night, I can say that I would have run the ball a lot more than Florida did. Um, I'll say that. At the same time, I will say this is a game where you had 5 of your top 7 pass catchers were on the injury report or out. Uh, you had just injuries throughout. You're banged up at receiver and tight end, and it's been a long season, so there's fatigue, there's all that. Everybody and their mother was looking at this game going, Florida's going to run the heck out of the ball because they have to. They've got 4 tight ends listed on the depth chart. They've got like 6 receivers available on the depth chart. Everybody was saying, okay, they're going to run this ball nonstop because they have to, which is why I think it was a very good idea for Florida to come out throwing the ball. I understand that, but I understand starting the game by throwing the ball a ton because then defense has to respect that. Defense can't key in on the run. You can at certain points though go, okay, we want to run the ball. Like that's why we threw the ball so much early on. So we're gonna run the ball now. And I feel like they just did not do it consistently. They didn't really get into a rhythm. It'd be like, oh, run, pass, punt, run, pass, punt. And it was just messy football. I don't like how it went. Again, I understand saying we need to throw the ball. It's also important to acknowledge that while I say, yeah, I would have run the ball more, this is still a team that put up 35 points. This is still a team that, I mean, yeah, Anthony Richardson went 9 for 27. He went like 25 minutes without a complete, 25 game minutes without a completion at one point, and it was bad offensive football. But at the same time, you can say that there were opportunities to throw the ball deep downfield. You look at Ricky Pearsall's 2 touchdowns, long plays. You have a Jonathan Odom touchdown. Throwing opportunities were there. That's the important part where you could say, yeah, Anthony Richardson went 9 for 27. Part of it was drops. Part of it was inaccurate passes. Part of it was great coverage by Florida State Seminoles. But you also have to say, yes, it was there. I could say I want to run more, but passing opportunities were there. So I think it was not a matter of the game plan. I think it was more so about the execution, which you'll hear more about in the defense because there was a lot of that going on. But yeah, it's like, well, with injured receivers and depth receivers being really your only guys available, there was Ricky Pearsall, and then everybody else was just depth, and that just sucked. But yeah, as far as throwing the football, Gators just could not do it. Whether it was, again, because of an inaccurate ball or just a bad decision to throw the ball, like that Anthony Richardson pick, woof. That was one of the worst decisions we've seen him make all season. It was him trying to make a play, but it was him forcing a ball where he shouldn't have forced a ball. And even when he did try forcing the ball, it was an inaccurate pass and it got picked. And by inaccurate, I mean not in the perfect spot or not in the right spot that it needed to be, which is a little nitpicky, but at the same time, you're the quarterback of the Florida Gators. I expect more from you. So there's that. But yeah, this is it was crappy throwing the football. Contested drops, or not contested drops, but contested catch opportunities that were not reeled in. Drops that happened. Also, I think Gators fans, I want you to take a step back and maybe be like, hey, let's learn what a drop is. Like everybody's like, oh, Caleb Douglas with just drops galore. The only drop he really had was that one that was in the bucket, defender in front of him, defender behind him, and he got hit. That's not a drop. You need to get rid of the barbaric. If it hits your hands, you should catch the ball. If it hits your hands and you're not getting hit, you should catch the ball. If it hits your hands and you get hit, I find a very difficult way to blame you for that. So there's that. There were also like 2 passes where I thought they were incomplete, but I thought there should have been a defensive flag, whether it was pass interference or holding. That didn't happen. Not that that excuses the incompletions, but just when you look at the stats, I think it's important if you're going to be a box score guy to acknowledge that those plays happened. Injuries really showed. But I will say this. I wanted Anthony Richardson to throw the ball like 20 times, have him run it like 12, have Montrell and Trevor Etienne both have like 15 to 20 carries. Didn't happen. Anthony Richardson, though, I think did a good job of looking comfortable and creating plays. And I don't want to say he did a great job because I don't think it was a great job. I think it was a good job, though, of looking comfortable, creating plays. He was someone who was constantly under pressure. Like Richard Garage, worst game of the season, easily for him. Like he played a bad football game when Florida needed him to play his best football game. He played his worst. Um, there was pressure really throughout. Like the offensive line as pass protectors didn't have a great game. They just didn't. As run blockers, I think they did a pretty good job. But pass protectors wasn't a great game for them. But I think Anthony Richardson did a good job of looking comfortable, looking to create plays, looking to extend plays, make plays with his legs, make things happen, and kind of be. He tried to shoulder the load. He tried to shoulder the load and he didn't let it get to him in the sense of like he wasn't pouty, he wasn't hands down. He was on the sideline talking trash. There was one point where I think it was after a Florida punt. They went to the Gators sideline and they were getting chippy, and Anthony Richardson was like walking onto the field yelling at someone. Like it was like, okay, like that's fire. Like that's the fire that we're looking for, Anthony. So I think it was a good game for him. I think that he okay. I think it was a good game for him mentally. I don't think it was a great game for him accuracy wise. I think he did make some struggles. He made some bad throws, and they were some missed throws because of him. But I think overall, that was a positive performance for Anthony Richardson running the ball. He tried to make some stuff happen. People felt that 240 finally, like he made them do it. So I will say, Anthony Richardson, good game. We're about to talk about the defense. But first, this week's thrilling moment in college football is brought to you by Nissan. The thrilling designs behind the new lineup from Nissan are intended to empower drivers in vehicles as capable as the drivers themselves. And when I think of a thrilling moment this week, I'm looking at Ricky Pearsall's second touchdown versus Florida State. Mainly because the first time it happens, you could say it's a fluke. You could say, there was a misstep, there was whatever. The second time it happens is just they're better than you. Like Ricky Pearsall should have had more. Like he should have had more big plays. And I was also at that point, I was like, okay, like that moment was when I was like, this might be a wild football game. It was a great football game, but this segment has been inspired by the thrilling new designs featured across Nissan's new lineup of vehicles. Pursue what thrills you in the all-new Frontier, Armada, or Pathfinder today, available now at NissanUSA.com. To wrap up today's episode of Locked On Gators, we are talking about this Florida Gators defense against the Florida State Seminoles offense on Friday. I will preface everything by saying this. Don't you dare come at me talking about the defensive game plan. Because I don't care what the game plan was. The execution was dog crap. Simple as that. The defensive game plan, you look at the Florida State offense. The Noles offensive line does a great job of not allowing pressure often and not allowing a ton to get in the backfield against Jordan Travis. So the defensive game plan was make them uncomfortable, make Jordan Travis uncomfortable, get pressure. There was a combination of man blitz, zone blitz, creepers, sim pressures, everything that you can do to generate pressure schematically. Conceptually, that worked. Florida had, I think it was 18 pressures on the night. People living in the backfield and the success on the blitzes and on the sim pressures, replacement blitzes, phenomenal. Like, for the amount of time they were called to the amount of times they found success on it, it was a lot. They found a lot of success bringing that extra pressure, bringing the extra rusher from one side, whatever it might be. They found success there. Conceptually, it worked. I am hard pressed. I'm having a difficult time blaming Patrick Toney, blaming Sean Spencer, the co-defensive coordinators. I know Patrick Toney's the one that calls the plays, but they both developed the game plan. I have a difficult time blaming Patrick Toney and Sean Spencer because you got in the backfield a lot. You did. The Gators seemingly lived in the Seminoles backfield. But you can't scheme sacks. You can scheme the pressure. The players have to finish the play, and they didn't finish the play. So that is why I'm like, hey, I have a very difficult time blaming the coaches for the players not being able to finish a play that they should have been able to finish. So there's that. I also will say that I think this was another week, or at least another one of those weeks, where the Florida Gators defensive front just did not show up against the run. It was one of the worst games that we've seen, at least that I've seen, as far as this defensive front actually stepping up to make plays and actually, do their jobs. But Florida State just they just had a lot of fun against the Gators. I can tell you that. Running the ball, they had 236 rushing yards. 176 of those came after contact. It was the defensive front not showing up. Again, that's what it was. It was the defensive front not showing up once again. Jordan Travis, of course, had a lot of those yards. 18 missed tackles is completely unacceptable. Like, 18 missed tackles is a lot. It is. It's a lot. 8 of them came in the run game. You know what that means? The pass game, the pass rush was where a lot of the missed tackles came from. Antoine Power Island had 3 missed tackles. Princely Omonmi had 2 missed tackles. Javon Dexter had 2 missed tackles. Lloyd Summerall III had a missed tackle. Tyreek Sapp had a missed tackle. Ventrell Miller had 2 missed tackles. There were a lot of missed tackles, and a lot of them came in the passing game. A lot of them came from people pass rushing, getting in the backfield against Jordan Travis, him Houdiniing his way out of it, and him making a play after that. And look, you could say Jordan Travis played the game of his life. You can argue that. He had arguably the best game of his career as far as actually extending plays and creating plays with his legs and being an evasive quarterback. That's also because Florida's pass rush was just so bad. Their actual finishing of sacks was so bad. They both happened. Both things can be true. The Gators pass rush did not show up, or the Gators being able to finish plays did not show up. And Jordan Travis played a fantastic game. As far as the secondary, I have one player that I'd like to give props to, who I think I've been pretty hard on, Jason Marshall Jr. He was tasked with one of the toughest challenges in the country, taking on Johnny Wilson. 6'7", big dude. Jason Marshall played against him a lot. They were lined up often. When lined up against Johnny Wilson, Jason Marshall was targeted 5 times. So when Jason Marshall was covering Johnny Wilson, they threw to Johnny Wilson 5 times, 2 completions, 46 yards and a pass broken up, and 6 yards after the catch. So even when he did get the catch, he was tackled fairly quickly after that. They threw at him quite a bit. Again, he's 6'7". You're going to throw to him a lot. But Jason Marshall, being the smaller option, did a pretty good job there. I am so hard pressed to give him any criticism there. Not everybody played a great game. Jason Marshall played one hell of a game against Johnny Wilson. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we're available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be back tomorrow. I think tomorrow we're going to talk about the either portal or coaching carousel. They'll each get their own full episodes. For your second listen, check out Locked On SEC, hosted by Chris Gordy of Sports 790. Get the best coverage on the best conference, including the best university, the University of Florida. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olson. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Whole Nine Sports and Giants Country of SI.com, and I will see you all tomorrow.